We're live. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Octant community meeting. Today is September 15, 2021. Well, time flies. Uh, okay, remember that you can add any topic you want to discuss to the agenda if you're able to join live or you're watching the recording, and also you can catch us up on the Slack channel and also some other places like Twitter. Okay. Well, without any additional comments, I would like to start by status updates. Let me hide this. That 24 has been released. That's really interesting. Remember that the main theme for this release was an improved blogging experience. So we have to say that there are several mm, quality of life improvements for plugin authors out there in this release. So we really recommend you that go out, download it, upgrade, test it to see all the new improvements. We have here kind of a summary of some of them, like for example, the added the container image manifest for pods. This was a um, you know, outstanding request from a couple of years ago, and having this information available in Octant for users. And now, if you go to a pod summary page in the container section, you will find the image manifest. So it's useful when, for example, you're using images with the latest label, and you need to find out exactly which image you're using. It even has the layers. It was really interesting to find that it has the actual image, Docker image layers in this case. So it's an interesting feature and a really useful piece of information for users. So it's now available there. So I don't know if someone from the team want to comment on this. If,
Yeah, quick comment and just a thought here is that looking back at that manifest expandable tree, we haven't done too much like UX testing on that. Or I mean, even more specifically, when I want to see the image manifest, specifically, what am I looking for, right? Like I think like the number of times that I've actually had to like stare through the layers in a Docker image is zero. So there might be something about this blurb of information that we want to refine more in the future, though I'm not exactly sure what that is. So we do want to definitely figure out if this is useful, what exactly is useful about it, other than saying, oh, you can now see more information.
yeah, true. That's kind of the same thing that I thought when I saw this. It's interesting, you know, but having, for example, the layers there, it's not really clear on how to use that in the real world. So, um, but yeah, and all the feedback that our users can give us on this matter will be really useful. Okay, this one we saw it in the past community meeting. The automatic reloading of the Go plugin. So now when users install or modify a Go plugin, they don't have to reload Octane, quitting or restarting Octane. So now that's been fixed. And it's really interesting because there were some plugin authors out there that reported that behavior previously. So that's now fixed. So that's really interesting. I think we saw also a demo from Wayne in the last community meeting. So, but I just wanted to re-emphasize that this is now available. So it's important.
Yeah, there was one thing that came out of that, which was it on Windows. It does it even half work? It works, but it doesn't work as it's intended on Windows. So Windows has a different mechanism for doing file system locks, and as a result of that, you can't overwrite the actual plugin binaries in place as you would in Linux or macOS. And so what Windows does under the hood when you try to copy the file over the top of the running plugin file is that it creates this temporary binary with like a symlink or basically a fake link back to the real file with using some internal special prefix on the or suffix pre, suffix on the file, and the result is that you get duplicate versions of the plugin running under Windows if you try to just like copy and overwrite it. And then if you try to do it a third time, it will fail because it can't create that the old temporary binary. And it was actually Vikram who discovered this bug when he was testing it out. So we opened a new issue to specifically address that set of concerns for Windows plugins and the Go binaries there. There's actually a good solution to get it fixed up, and so that's something that we'll work on getting in there for people who might be running the Windows version of Octant, so that they can experience all that is being able to just drag and drop and install and remove plugins with reckless abandon.
There you go.
Yep, that's the one.
Oh, got it. Interesting, especially for our Windows users out there. So that's interesting. Thank you, Wayne. So yeah, there's some more bug fixes and changes, and you can take a look at the release notes out there. Most of them, again, focus on the plugin experience. Improving, for example, logging and better errors for JavaScript plugins and in general plugins. So that's part of the improvements in this release for plugin authors. So all right. So now we have here real formula update work in progress. I don't know if it was Sam who put out this, but yeah, I checked this morning and it's still Octant, that 24 is not yet really.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a funny story. So one of the maintainers of the Homebrew Core repo, he uses a bot to open updated brew formulas, and then there was a thing we had to fix the brew formula, and I found out I was talking to a bot, and the PR just automatically closed. So I'll reopen a new PR with the updated formula.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Feels bad, man. Thought
But
we were
yeah.
friends. It's just a bot.
Yeah, it gets kind of really confusing because it's the actual maintainer account and it's
Yeah,
used for automation at the same time. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
there's
I
a
did. I did that in the past where I used my GitHub as the API key for a bot, and it got confusing very quickly, even to me. Where I was like, "What did I say?"
well, but I can only imagine how many formulas they receive PRs for every day. So I guess he had to use a bot for that. Okay. Right. And speaking of brew, Sam shared these really neat statistics for the Octane behavior, let's say, in brew. At least in the last 30 days, we have more than 1,000 installs. Um, which is kind of more than 40 installs per day, more than one system install Octant per hour. So that's interesting. That's only for operating system that use brew. So it was interesting. I wasn't aware of these, statistics. So I will keep an eye on this. Really interesting. Okay, in terms of content generation, a new video tutorial was added to the main YouTube channel. Let me open up here. Not interfere with the streaming, so it's kind of focus on some troubleshooting scenarios. With Octant, we'll keep adding more this series, and if you want to see something covered in the form of a tutorial or something like that, so remember that we have a project here in the repo that is called enablement. You can add here, or you can just open up an issue and requesting whatever you need in terms of content. We'll be happy to work on it. Right, so if there's not anything else in terms of status updates, we can move to discussion points. And this one is really interesting. Improving the plugin experience. What are we missing to achieve 1.0? So that's a big discussion. So who wants to start?
Yeah, I wanted to just start a thread on this, and we don't have to cover all of this together. So the idea here is that we devoted a dedicated sprint to this plugin experience idea, and we've executed on some tasks. And I want to think back now, saying, okay, like given, say, like if we do another sprint or maybe 2 or 3 more sprints, right? Like what pieces are we missing to hit that 1.0 stability that we're looking for in that plugin API? And one of the first elements that stuck out to me when talking with Daniel and on the Starboard plugin is the idea that we need to do something better about how we handle REST configs. And actually, could I share my screen? It might be easier to
Sure.
show code and text, but the idea is inherently the same. There's a thread here. Make this a little bigger. Yeah. And so one of the discussions that came out here was that to do some of the interesting things that we do with Octant plugins, like say an action, and in here it's actually kind of a fun way to do it. It's a wrapper around this start cube hunter scan. It's a wrapper around their CLI tool. So in other words, if you actually look at the Starboard code base, this is pretty much copy and paste out of the book. And what happens with a lot of these tools like Helm, Starboard, whatever, a lot of these things, or any kubeconfig plugin for that matter, they tend to use this pattern, right? Like they want to generate a REST config, and then they take this REST config, and then that's their authentication to talk to the API server, and then they do their own things, and they have their own code bundled together. And Octant does this the same way, server side as well. And the idea is that we want to have that somehow communicated over through the plugins in some way, but we don't want to do it in a way where rogue plugins can do weird things to the cluster, and we want to be sensible about it. So maybe there's supposed to be like a read-only way to do it without transporting secrets over. We'd have to think about this a little bit more, but the hole is there. Right? Like I think like we don't want to end up in scenarios where we're also generating a separate config, because now we can get into weird cases where if Octant starts to shift around contexts or change the kube config, if this plugin could potentially be reading from a different kube config than Octant, and it might not be operating in the same space. So the idea here, and we can see this again in a different plugin. This is Ontria, very similar, and they do this os.getEnd kubeconfig, and they construct their own kubeconfig. And they only get away get away with this. They get a pass because this is run in cluster. So you can kind of make assumptions in the runtime environment, but generally you can't do this, right? Like I think like if you do this on Windows, I don't think it works. Maybe it does. I don't remember. I believe there's something Windows specific about this, and so forth. But that's kind of the first thing that jumps to mind as we move towards this stable 1.0 is we need to have a better story about kubeconfigs, contexts, and what is the current context that Octant is looking at.
Right. Absolutely. Any other comment? Yeah, I just wanted to comment in general that if someone asked me how to improve the plugin experience with the limited knowledge and information I have so far, I will say that every time I think about it, I remember a phrase that goes like this: a platform is successful if it becomes invisible, right? So if somehow we work on a I don't know if better is the word, but let's say a better plugin API for Octant. Octant will basically become a platform for to enable a whole ecosystem of plugins and all these developer experiences that we have always tried to achieve. So improving a plugin API, I'm not really sure how it looks like. It probably has to do with the features you just showed, Sam. Probably it has to do with documentation. Probably it has to do with some other things. But in general, that's part of the feedback we receive in the survey from plugin authors, having a more intuitive plugin API that eases the task to create plugins and to embed content from other applications in Octant. Uh, that will definitely be an improvement. I don't know if that's the requirement for 1.0. I'm not sure about that, but those are my 2 cents on this. So I don't know if someone else from the team wants to comment on this really interesting topic. Because from that 24 to 1.0, there are a lot of releases. So let's listen so Octane can get there.
I think for me, the main thing that's missing is the ability to perform watches for specific sets of resources by plugins. Um, and potentially having some other uh, less rigid or more, I don't know, the being able to just thinking about what Sam was talking about with the REST config and stuff, having something that is a like a fit, like it satisfies that interface, but it isn't actually a REST config. it's 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 a Kubernetes client packaged up to look like the Kubernetes client that all these tools expect, except it's backed by the gRPC API that gets called. Mainly because giving handing over the REST config creates this syncing issue that becomes really difficult. They change the namespace. They change, things like that are they change the context within Octant. Like that REST config that they have created this new client with that's probably off running somewhere doing stuff. It needs to, hook into some event bus to know, hey, this Kubernetes client that I created from the REST config that was querying resources for namespace one. Well, the user just switched the namespace, so now I need to update my custom client calls so that I'm querying from namespace two. And same with like the context. Oh, they just switched contexts. Now I got to go and recreate my custom client to do that. And the whole point of the plugin client that we created was to abstract that problem away and let people just focus on querying resources. Now, I think the point that Sam raises is very valid, that many of these tools make assumptions about what's there and plug into that, REST config to create their client. So if we can give them an analog to that like if we can satisfy that interface that mostly does what they would expect, but is still backed by our client, that to me is more ideal. But I don't know that we can do that. Like that a lot of these the use of this client is deeper than just like get list resources. So I don't know, that's a tough one for me. But adding the ability to watch an arbitrary resource endpoint and just say, anytime this thing changes, send me an event for it. Here are my event handlers that I've registered for this watch. Being able to set that up, I think, is a big, pretty important. And once watch is in place, 1.0 for Octant is really more about the plugin API than it is about any of the feature set. As long as the feature set that we're enabling, or as long as the plugin API that we're enabling allows people to create the feature set that you get from Octant, then I think we're at 1.0. So log streaming, resource viewer, terminal connections, port forwarding, which I think plugins can do port forwarding now, but being able to perform all of those actions via the plugin API, some of those require, stream connections, and then being able to watch resources. I think that once we have those things, then we're 1.0.
Okay, any other comment, opinions, this discussion point?
It honestly doesn't seem like a lot of work to hit that final stretch, but maybe I'm speaking too soon.
That would be awesome. But yeah, we'll need to keep refining this and keep grabbing the feedback from our users to refine this idea of what is missing to get to 1.0. But yeah, probably the most common thing here will be the plugin API. Okay, if there's no additional comment, status update, or some other topic, or I will say thank you for joining and have a great day. Thank you.